Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.
Welcome back to the Global Indian Podcast, home to the greatest conversations and the official platform for people of Indian origin. Yes, let's face it, we are everywhere. Now, you know, every single week we plunge ourselves into the human experience behind our perceptions of identity, take a second look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the big conversations. This week, I find myself on the last voyage across the Caribbean, and I land back in Trinidad to take on a really interesting discussion. I'm joined with the remarkable Nutan Ragoobir. She's a fourth generation Indian residing in Trinidad and Tobago. She's an insurance consultant by profession, but at night she is fascinated by the Hindu epics. In fact, she is the founder of the NGO Gurmitya Foundation, and she actually created the first ever digital library dedicated to Indian history in the country. She's written several books. The second book is Fires of Fate, that has recently been launched and dives into the lives of about 20 lesser known female characters from Hindu epics. The reason why we look to take on this discussion is because it's actually incredibly fascinating for this simple fact. When most people of the diaspora look back at their notion of Indianness, most do it through the guise of religion and the religious identities that are portrayed. Now, this is really fascinating when it comes down to gender roles. The way that people see a man or woman has to behave, what the characteristics of these incredible human beings are supposed to be like. And most of the time we don't ask the deeper questions. Well, that is until now. In this conversation, we take a real deep dive into the idea of gender, into the idea of identity, and really looking at some of the characters that she speaks about. That, for me, reignites a deeper discussion, having a look at the role of religion, society, and how we should be reading texts. As always, I hope you enjoy this incredible conversation, and many thanks to all our dear supporters and sponsors, many of which you hear from soon. If you too would like to be involved in our 50 Shades of Brown discussions, well, it couldn't be easier. Come to the website. It's globalindianseries.com. I really hope you enjoy this incredible session.
Hi, my name is Divya and I'm co-founder of the Global Indian Podcast. Before you get to today's show, I've got a quick favour to ask. If you've been enjoying our conversations, I'd love if you could take just 1 minute to leave us a review on the platform that you're listening to us on and share our work to friends and family. It helps us out a lot. Word of mouth is the primary way that we grow. Thanks for your continued support.
Hi, my name is Nestor Alfred, CEO of St. Lucia Citizenship by Investment. Think freedom. What comes to mind? Freedom to explore, to travel to any destination for work or play. Or is it freedom of expression? Being surrounded by the globally minded, those who care for society and environment. Every year, people from around the world apply for St. Lucian citizenship because they realize that real freedom is based on choice. Discover more about St. Lucian citizenship and how it's helping global Indians achieve more.
My name is Chitra Stern, and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martinal Resorts and Martinal Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martinal, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID. Have a great day.
And just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move.
Hi, Rajan, and hello to all of your listeners and viewers. I am Nutan from Trinidad and Tobago, and I've very simply written my second book entitled Fires of Faith, where I have highlighted the lives of about 20 Hindu women from the epics, shedding light on them, helping people to form broader perspectives, be more accepting. I have not touched on Sita, but we'll speak more about that.
I was going to say, you're very humble, because not only have you written your second book, but you've had a lot of experience in terms of looking at these sacred texts for yourself. So this is a lot of dedicated time in terms of looking at mythology, having a look at organized religion, as well as looking at characters behind some of the big stories out there. So run me through, you wrote this fascinating book. I know that we've had discussions before, and we had a guest on a while back from Trinidad that spoke about the role of Sita. And I got a message from me saying, Rajan, there's so much more to this than you need to know about. And so run me through, why did you write this book, and what can the audience expect to learn about, and why is it important at this moment in time?
Okay, so traditionally, the Hindu goddess Sita has been honored as the silent figure of strength in the Hindu epic Ramayana. And here in Trinidad, we continue to focus more or less solely on Ramayana, as the main Hindu text. However, Ramayana dates to the Treta Yuga, the second world age in Hinduism, yet we continue to use Sita as the primary source of inspiration for women in today's Kali Yuga, the fourth world age in Hinduism. And there's no doubt that Sita set a high standard as an ideal woman, but there have been so many other characters who have been left undiscovered, characters who are or can be more applicable to today's world and the roles of women in today's society.
And this is quite fundamental, because I know when we spoke earlier on, you said the way that society looks at itself in most cases is either through the social norms and customs or also religion. In this case, when you look at a country like Trinidad, you have this large proportion of people that came by indentureship. Many of them were followers of Hinduism. And so therefore, these characters that they follow are much more, they're actually maps of what they interpret as good custodian behavior. But what you're arguing for a fact is saying, actually, when we look at these texts, if we take an academic response to it and re-look at the characters, we find that there's a lot more flavor there, that there's a lot more interpretation to be had. And therefore, it gives us a very different version of what modern Hindu living should be. You mentioned in your book, there's a character there that had a sexual reassignment surgery in there. And this was done, as you rightly said, over 3000 BC. Now, how does that re-change the way that you feel the Hindu identity is formed, especially at a time where you look at the LGBTQ community in countries like India, as well as across the globe, especially those amongst the Hindu faith?
Well, the mere fact that these stories were presented to us around 3000 BC, as you see, it just shows the dynamic nature of the religion of Hinduism. These stories written at 3000 BC can actually be applicable to a modern society today. I mean, we have been in the Caribbean, us Indians have been here in the Caribbean for about 177 years now. And the religious texts, that is Rāmāyana, Mahabharata, and so on, continue to play a dominant role in Hinduism. But at the same time, the rules and expectations of Hindu women have changed. Women are empowered, employed, independent, and they're now going against the stereotypes of what Hindu women, should be according to dominant characters like Sita in Ramayana. So I think we definitely need to relook some of these stories, because if we look at some of the stories like Shikandi, who you've been describing, it just shows how liberal the religion was, how accepting the religion was. The religion at that time was describing everyone as a unique individual on this search, this quest to fulfill his purpose. And they were not just grouping everybody together.
But when you look back at these historical texts, again, the way that you're doing it, almost through an anthropological study, and you're really deep diving into the characters, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you think people have had about almost the characters that people hold up as custodians of truth? I know that we spoke before about characters such as Ram, for example. What do you think more people need to know more about when they look at these characters as saying, oh, this is what a man or a woman needs to be like?
Well, I think people firstly need to understand that good and bad exist in everybody and in everything, and that they're relative. So good cannot exist without evil, evil cannot exist without good. Yes, Ram has been described as the ideal man, but in that avatar, as we know him as in the form of a man, some of his decisions can be questioned, I think. Like we were previously discussing, his decision to send Sita into exile, just to satisfy this washerman, this ordinary citizen, just to put to rest the speculation and accusations that were there. Was that really the best decision? Would that have happened in ancient England? would somebody have been allowed to make an accusation against a royal member and not been sent to the gallows?
And so then when you're looking at this, you're not saying it in an accusational point of view, saying these people are bad. You're saying, actually, if we start reading it for what it is, it actually gives us an indication of how society is, and for us to learn from those mistakes in some cases, or from those joyous moments to say, this is what could be applicable in our own lives in the present day, 2022, for example. Like you mentioned some of the other characters there. Before, I know we spoke about Vishnu, you said, well, there's an incarnation there of a woman. Or if you look at Krishna, that he used to dress as a milkmaid. And now when we see that, people have a lot more questions, even those who are following the same type of faith. What do you think that tells us about the way that academics look at religious texts, as well as those who are quote unquote religious pundits who haven't really gone through that professionalism to be able to take on the bigger discussions that are being presented within these books?
Well, I would think that the pundits are more learned when it comes to the scriptures, right? But it's either that they want to please their followers, or that, we're just happy accepting these truths that have been told to us. So they really see no need to dive further into the lives of some of these characters, some of these controversial characters. Hey, people like Sita, that's who you honor, that's who you look up to, that's who you want your role model to be like. We shouldn't speak of Draupadi. We shouldn't speak of Shikandi. We shouldn't tell people that Lord Vishnu once assumed the avatar of Mohini, that beautiful maiden, and that he and Lord Shiva would have conceived children together. No, we shouldn't tell people that. That's controversial. We should stick to our comfort zone. We should stick to our text being ideal text, where everybody's ideal.
That's interesting. Do you think that's a sign of the times in which we live, or do you think it's just the sign of the way in which the business model of religion has been set up? Because to go into those depth of arguments, you have to spend a lot of time to read a text rather than a 1D, but reading it really on a point of view person of saying, what was it like at that moment in time, and reading each character almost like a character and really getting under the skin of them.
Yeah, but if we just question what has been taught to us, then one would long to know, why did he assume this form of Mohini? Was it just a hobby? Was it just time pass? Because traditionally we have been taught that God assumes an avatar when he really wants to achieve some purpose, right? So Ram came on earth in the form of a man because he wanted to slay Ravan, and so on. So yeah, I think we are doing a great disservice to ourselves by not diving further into the lives of some of these characters. And yeah, coming back to that podcast that you had when I messaged you, I mean, it's really appalling that a woman in today's society would continue to focus solely on Sita, when after 177 years of us Indians being in the Caribbean and overcoming all the trials and tribulations that have come our way, we continue to focus on Sita, one who easily accepted the fate that was sent to her, and one who did not challenge social norms.
What does it mean for you to be a Hindu woman in Trinidad?
I'm very happy being a Hindu woman. I love the fact that the religion is so dynamic. I do enjoy all our festivals and all of that. However, I do believe the religion has become a bit ritualistic, right? Where we believe that we must perform all of these pujas and do all of these offerings and all of that. And somewhere along those lines, we have more or less forgotten or left discovered such characters, who are so applicable to a modern society today, not only to Hindus, but, to other ethnic groups as well.
Because in your book, you also speak about women who are widowers, single parents. And again, that's something that people don't really associate towards the Hindu scriptures. And yet you took time to kind of uncover these facts and go into a lot more detail there. How do you think it changes the way that people look at themselves and within the religion?
How do people look at themselves? I would hope that the readers would form some new perspectives, especially when it relates to such controversial characters. I would hope that they become more accepting of themselves, right? It may boost some of their self-confidence, self-esteem, and all of that. Because if we continue to compare people solely to Sita, then that really does a disservice to them. when they are themselves on, on a unique path, on a unique journey of discovering themselves, discovering their purposes, and so on.
Absolutely. And so for you, one of the biggest takeaways I've seen on your side is people look at the sense of purpose. Every human being has a purpose on this planet. And so when you look at each character, you're saying each character was purposefully included because they carried a message towards it. So therefore, to only focus on one or two would be doing disservice to the plethora of other individuals who are also mentioned in the same vein there. What do you think it tells us more about the human identity? Do you think as people, regardless of co-religionists or not, do we just like binary functions? Do we like just to stick things in easy, memorable chunks? Say this person was good, this person was bad. Okay, let's not question it. Let's just go down that route.
Yeah, maybe we're quite happy with that. But, as you know, Rajan, growth hardly ever comes from a comfort zone. Or maybe people are fearful as well of speaking out, I, however, have not been met, so far with any negative feedback. People seem to be enjoying the book. And I have written the book in a very simple way for people, to re-question what has been taught to us, to broaden their perspectives, to form their own opinions, or maybe to have discussions with others, who may shed some further lights and, also help me understand the characters a bit more.
No, it's absolutely fascinating. If people want to find out more about the book, where do they go to?
They can simply contact me on my Facebook page. The book is currently available only in hardcover, and the book is being shipped to foreign countries.
That's fantastic. Is there any final words that you want to leave with the audience? Because I think that there's a lot that's been spoken about here that kind of makes you relook at the way that we look at our own religions. Do we bother to ask those deeper questions, to kind of relook at a text as what it is rather than how we are? Or do we just tend to rely upon other so-called professionals? And I think sometimes we have to question their authority over things to kind of give us that short, quick summary of pieces. And I think what you've done really carefully and cleverly is that you've deconstructed this idea of a Hindu woman, and you provided a lot more basis and evidence basis that actually even within the religion itself, we can see that there's so many different characteristics, almost like 50 shades of brown discussions to say, this is what it means to be a woman. And a lot of the stories are still very similar to what people are going through right now as well.
Yeah, I would hope that the readers do question what has been taught to them. And question doesn't always mean a bad thing. It can do some service to them and to others as well. When we question these notions that have been taught to us, when we question the status quo and all of that.
So many questions come up, doesn't it? It's for those who are interested in finding out more about the book, check out the link in the bio. We're going to put a link directly to Nutan's Facebook page. I find this conversation incredibly interesting because I remember we did a conversation many months ago with Lord Singh, and the question was saying, well, what makes you Sikh? What is that identity? And in tongue-in-cheek fashion, he said, well, my father was one, so therefore I assume the identity. And although he was joking about that, there is that element of saying, how often do we start to investigate the religions that we follow that have ultimately huge impact upon our identities and our understanding of the world? I find this one a really interesting one, and we're going to be doing a lot more with Nutan, having a look at these epics. Again, if you'd like to get involved, make sure you tune in to the platform that you're listening on and share our work, because with your help, we get to continue building the world's largest living encyclopedia of people just like us.
Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.